Hi, and welcome to the workshop IELTS Booster. My name is Fabi, and I help students prove their English level so they can apply for opportunities abroad. I'm an English teacher here in Brisbane, Australia, and I teach English at both universities and language schools. My specialty? The IELTS test. But what exactly is the IELTS test? IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System, and it's the most widely accepted exam for those who want to study, work, or live in countries like Canada, the US, Australia, the UK, and parts of Europe. So, if you're planning to go to a university abroad, apply for scholarship, get a work visa, apply for residency, or even just unlock better job opportunities in your country, you probably need to take the IELTS test. But here's one thing, the test is not cheap. And most people don't pass the first time. In fact, many students pay to take the test again and again, and not because they aren't smart, but because they weren't prepared. But yes, it is possible to pass the test even on your first try. And that's exactly what I'm going to help you with in this workshop. But how do you make that happen? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to uncover here. So, if you don't know where to start with your IELTS preparation, feel lost with too many materials, no clear direction, have never taken the test, and want to avoid wasting time and money, or if you've taken it but didn't get the score you need, then this workshop is for you.
Why did you do the IELTS test? What you needed? Well, I did it twice. The first time that I did it was when I wanted to get into my master's. And the second time was to get the skill assessment of that master's to be able to start the process to get the primary residency. Which is something that we all want when we come to Australia, right? Sure. Yeah, that's the dream, the biggest dream. So, question: did you get the score you needed using my method? Yes, I did. So, how many times did you do the test after studying with me? Once. Once. Once, yes.
So I needed to take IELTS test for my visa application.
Mhm.
And what kind of visa is it? It's a graduate visa.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just completed my studies. My major is advertising.
Mhm.
Yeah, I finished the Bachelor of Business.
Bachelor of Business, cool. Okay.
And did you get the score you needed using my method? I did.
Cool.
I also took the IELTS test myself, and today I live here in Australia. And you might be thinking, well, it must have been easy for her. But the truth is, I come from a poor family, and my dad worked at General Motors, and my mom was a stay home mom. My dad worked in a department where, from time to time, he'd find English magazines. Every time he saw one, he'd bring it home. And guess what? I would go through the entire magazine, and there was just one problem. I couldn't speak English. So I'd look at the images, read the words, and try to make sense of it all. My dad also had a friend who used to record shows from Nickelodeon and send us the VHS, and I'd watch them even though I didn't understand a single word. My parents noticed my interest and thought it would be a good idea to enroll me in an English course. But I have two sisters and one brother, and there were four of us. And my parents had a rule: if we can't afford it for all the kids, we don't do it. So you can imagine how hard it was for them to make that decision. English courses were expensive. Still, they did their best and they found a small school in my neighborhood that was more affordable than the big name schools in my town. When I was a kid, I had two favorite hobbies: doing things in English and drawing houses. Yep, when I was a kid, I had a very artistic side. I would spend hours drawing floor plans and sketching homes with rulers and colored pencils. So, as a child, I had two big dreams: to live abroad and to become an architect. While watching those Nickelodeon tapes, I would picture myself living in the United States. And when I was drawing, I imagined myself being a famous architect and designing beautiful houses. In high school, I studied to become a teacher. In Brazil, you can choose a vocational path during high school, and my parents thought it was better to leave school with a profession in hand. So when I finished high school, the next step was college. In Brazil, each university course has its own entrance exam. And guess which one I wanted? Architecture. I applied to do the architecture exam, and my parents said, architecture is a tough career. You might struggle to find a job. Why not apply for education as well? I didn't really want to, but I said, okay, what did I have to lose? And guess what? I passed both exams when I was 17-year-olds and I had a choice. I told my parents, I want to study architecture. And they said, well, architecture is 800 reais a month. Education is 300. We can't afford architecture, but if you study education, graduate, you can get a job, and then you can pay for your architecture later. That was hard. I had a dream, and someone told me I could not have it. It felt like I wasn't allowed to dream, but I didn't accept that. Instead of blaming my parents, I saw it as a challenge. And I still had one thing to hold on to, living abroad. So I started looking into exchange programs, and when I saw the prices, I thought, oh my God, I'll never be able to afford this. But when I found the au pair program, you go to the US, live with a family with a babysitter, and then they cover your accommodation, pay you a small salary, and they even pay for your studies. It wasn't cheap, but it was the most affordable option, and I set off to go. I moved to the US. I stayed with the same family for 2 years, and it was an incredible experience. But eventually, I had to go back to Brazil and figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I had a teaching degree, so I started teaching English at one of the biggest schools in Brazil. And early on, my boss told me, if you want to grow as a teacher, you need international certifications. She recommended I take the CPE, the most advanced Cambridge exam. So I studied hard and I failed. Yes. To pass, you need 60 points. I got 59. That one point crushed me, but instead of quitting, I decided to take it again. This time abroad. But I didn't have much money to just study. I needed to work too. So I chose a country where international students can study and work at the same time. Australia. When I arrived, I lived the typical student life. I studied during the day and worked in restaurants at night and on the weekends. And eventually, I passed the CPE exam and I got a B. I was so proud. And then the next question came, now what? I had a new dream. I had a dream to teach English in Australia, but there was one problem. I was not a native speaker. Would anyone hire me? My teacher introduced me to a school manager who saw my CV, noticed my B on the CPE, and gave me a few hours, and it was amazing. But after a few months, he told me, I can't offer you a full time position because you're not a native speaker. And that broke me. And again, I felt like I couldn't dream. I cried for days. But eventually, I realized that there was just another challenge that I needed to overcome. So I printed a few CVs and walked around Brisbane, dropping them off at every language school that I could find. I did feel like giving up, but I knew that if I wanted to live my dream, I had to keep going. And finally, because of my B on the CPE exam and my A grade on the International English Teaching Certification, someone gave me a chance. A few months after, I started teaching at that school, and something unexpected happened. I was invited to start teaching for the IELTS preparation classes. Yes. One of the teachers at the school was an actual IELTS examiner, and she trained me personally. So I started teaching the IELTS course. And guess what happened next? I received an email from the Australian immigration saying, if you want to apply for your permanent residency, you need to do the IELTS test. Crazy, right? There I was teaching IELTS to other students, and suddenly I have to take the test myself. And that's when everything clicked. Until that point, I had no idea how many people were taking the IELTS test. But people weren't doing the test because they wanted to. They were doing the test because they had a dream, just like I did. Some wanted to study abroad, others wanted to immigrate, work overseas, or build a better life for their families. And I realized the IELTS test is not just a test, it's a bridge, it's a passport, a key to unlock the future that you want. That's when I felt something shift inside me. I was no longer just helping people with their grammar or writing. I was helping them get closer to their dreams. And I was one of them too. Because at the moment, I had one dream to become a resident in Australia. So I did the test. And I got an overall band score of 8 on my first try. Doing the IELTS test was an eye-opening experience because for the first time I truly understood what my students go through, the pressure, the anxiety, the fear of failure. I felt all of it. And even before taking the test, I was already helping a lot of students, and many of them were getting great results. But after going through the same experience myself, something shifted. That experience pushed me to go deeper. I started learning everything I could about the IELTS test, every little detail, every strategy, every common mistake. So I could help my students not just pass, but succeed beyond expectations. Because I realized something important. My students didn't want the IELTS test. They wanted what came after the IELTS, just like I did. And I felt a deep desire to get them there. Well, why? Well, because I know how it feels when someone tells you that you can't live your dream. And that hurts. At some point in my life, people told me that my dreams were too big, that I couldn't do it, that I should be realistic. And it crushed me. But I didn't give up. That's when I realized I didn't want to be an architect anymore. I wanted to help people believe in their dreams again. Because feeling like you're not allowed to dream, that's one of the worst feelings in the world. So I decided if no one else is telling them they can't do, I will. After that, I started talking to IELTS examiners. I even took practice tests several times just to understand exactly how it works. And then I made a discovery. I realized that the IELTS always follows the same structure. Sure, the topics change, the text, the questions, the recordings, but the core purpose of each part of the test never changes. Each of the four skills, listening, reading, writing, speaking, is designed to test very specific things. If you don't know exactly what they are, you're studying in the dark. And that is why so many people don't get the score they need. Not because they aren't good at English, but because they don't know what the examiner is really looking for. But once you understand that, everything changes. You stop studying for questions and you start studying for function. You begin to ask, what is the real purpose of this action? What is this question trying to prove about my English? And that's when your preparation takes a full 360 turn. That's when I created a system, a way of preparing for the IELTS test that gives you total clarity when you sit down to take the test. You know exactly what to do. You're not guessing, you're not hoping, you're in control. And I call this method the IELTS Ikigai. Because when you study this way, you enter a kind of a flow where everything makes sense. Your confidence goes up, and you finally feel ready to prove your English level without wasting time, without wasting money. Sharing this knowledge with others today is, in a way, my way of keeping my dreams alive. Because honestly, everything I did, everything that went wrong started with a dream. And today, I know helping people believe in their dreams. That's what truly lights me up inside. When I look back, I'm deeply grateful because I now understand that I had to live this exact story. I wasn't supposed to become an architect because my dream had to change. I had to evolve into something much greater, something deeper, something more meaningful. Today, I feel I'm truly living my purpose. Every time I see a student's eyes light up when they realize that they can go after their dream. I gave up one dream so that everyone who crosses my path never gives up on theirs. And along the way, I found a new dream. I found my true passion, which is this: helping people believe again, helping people dream again, and showing them it's possible. And that's what I noticed over the years. Most students are making mistakes without even realizing it. And that's why today I'm going to show you the three biggest mistakes when preparing for the IELTS test. And I'm willing to bet you're making at least one of them right now. Let's start with mistake number one. It's a big one. I often see people saying, I want to study abroad. I want to live in another country. I want a better life overseas. But there's one thing: they are not actually preparing for that. They don't have proof of their English level. They are not preparing for the IELTS test. The truth is, you need it. Because if you're looking for a real opportunity, a university program, a scholarship, a job that actually pays well, or even a new visa, you need to prove your English level. And if you're thinking, oh, but not everyone asks for that. Well, let's be honest. Every single opportunity that's truly worth it, the kind that allows you to live in a foreign country without fear, will require your English certification. Yes, your IELTS score. Now, if you just want to go abroad, get an underpaid job, maybe even illegally, then go ahead. You don't need to prepare. You don't need to get a certification. And you don't even need to be here. But if you want something meaningful, if you want to apply for a serious, valuable opportunities like a master's, a PhD, or a well-paid position abroad, then the IELTS test is a non-negotiable. It will be there listed in every single application. Now, let me show you what actually happens to a lot of people. You're busy, you're working, studying, doing your thing, and then one day, the opportunity you've been waiting for finally opens up. Applications for your dream university are open. So you start preparing the documents. You hire a lawyer, you pay an agency, you chase down your recommendation letters, you write a cover letter, but you forget one thing: the IELTS test. Or maybe you didn't even know you needed it. Yes, that happens too. Then your application gets accepted and the university sends you a message. Please send the proof of your English proficiency, your IELTS score, and you don't have it. Or your lawyer or agency suddenly asks you for the score and only then tells you that the IELTS test is required. But they don't tell you when you need it or to have it ready. So what do? You panic. You book the test last minute. You try to cram everything in just a few days, but there's one thing. Chances are you won't get the score you need because you're not prepared. You don't know what the IELTS test is really testing. You don't know what the examiner is looking for. And what happens? You miss the deadline. you lose the opportunity. Your dream slips away. And it happens just because you didn't have the one thing that was required. It was always going to be required. This is the reality for a lot of people out there. So here's the thing. If you don't prepare ahead of time, if you don't start early and get your certification now, then any opportunity that comes your way might not actually be an opportunity for you. Just because you won't be ready. But now you're here. You're watching this workshop. That means you're in a different position. Now you know the truth. And once you know, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to let it pass? Or are you not going to prepare? Not going to secure your certification? Some people ask me, but if I take the IELTS test now, can I use the score later? Yes, your IELTS score, the one that proves your English level, is valid for 2 years in most cases. So you don't have to worry about expiration date. You have to worry about being ready to grab this opportunity that comes your way. Because trust me, you never know when your dream will knock on your door. And when it does, you don't want to miss it. Let me tell you a story that perfectly shows what happens when you don't prepare the right way. I had a student who took the IELTS test 11 times before coming to me for help. Guys, 11 times. And here's the thing. He spoke English. Yeah. But he couldn't get the score he needed. And he was running out of time. His visa was about to expire. And if he didn't get the right score, he'd have to leave Australia. He was under a lot of pressure, losing time and burning money. Want to do the math? Each IELTS test cost him 310 American dollars. 11 tests. That's 3,400 American dollars. And he still had to take one more after that. All because he thought, I speak English, I'll get the score I need. But that's not how it works. The IELTS doesn't just test whether you speak English, it tests whether you meet specific criteria. And if you don't know what they are, you probably won't get the score you need. So let me tell you this. Getting your certification early not only saves you time and money, but it also protects your dream. It gives you peace of mind. It puts you in control. And that's why mistake number one is this. Wanting to move abroad and not having the one basic requirement, your English certification, or worse, not even preparing for it. If you truly want this, you need to be ready when the opportunity shows up. Otherwise, it won't be an opportunity for you. And that means getting your IELTS test now. And now you might be thinking, wait, if that guy took the test 11 times and still couldn't get the score he needed, then this test must be insanely hard. I'll never get the score I need, let alone first try. And that's exactly what so many students think. They are afraid of the IELTS test. They believe it's impossible. But let me tell you, this belief is false. It's a mistake. The only reason you don't get the score you need is because you don't know what the test is actually looking for. And what if I told you that many of my students pass their tests on their very first try? It's true. They don't take the IELTS test multiple times. They don't spend years trying to prove their English. They take it once and they pass. Because even though the IELTS test is a test of English, speaking English is not enough. You need to understand how the test works, and you need to have the right strategy. That's the secret. That's the difference. I've had so many students who passed the IELTS the first time they took it because they knew the test and they had the right approach. So thinking the IELTS test is too hard isn't really based on truth. It's based on the fact that most people take the test over and over again without ever understanding how it actually works. Now, maybe you are also thinking, but my English isn't good enough. Well, let me tell you this. If you can understand me right now, your English is good enough. I say this as someone with over 10 years of experience teaching IELTS. So, the problem isn't your English, it's your belief. You are the only thing standing between you and your certification. If you understand what I'm saying, then the only reason you won't get the IELTS score is if you don't believe it's possible. And if you don't believe it, then no strategy, no teacher, no course can help you. And that's mistake number 2. Believing the IELTS test is too difficult and thinking you need perfect English to pass. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be prepared. And you need to believe you can do it. And the third mistake is one of the most common mistakes I see. Students start watching tons of YouTube videos, downloading dozens of books and materials, and spending hours and hours studying for the IELTS test. And guess what? That's a mistake because in the end, they just feel lost. Why? Well, because they're drowning in information. This is called information overload and it leads to confusion, not clarity. The truth is, it's not about how much you study, it's about how you study. The IELTS test is not a general English exam. It doesn't test your vocabulary or your grammar knowledge directly. It tests your skills. It's a skills-based test. That means you need to learn how to play the IELTS game. You need to know what the exam expects from you and how to show it. If you collect information and study at random, yes, you might improve your English in general, but that doesn't mean you get the score you need. In fact, the more random information you collect, the more confused you get. And you start doubting things you're once confident about. You second guess yourself. You freeze on the day of the test. That's why the real difference comes when you study with clarity, when you understand exactly what each section of the exam is testing and how to respond to it. That's what makes your journey easier. That's what gets you certified faster. So instead of consuming 1,000 different materials, choose one reliable method, and that shows you the right path. That way, you save time, you avoid stress, and you finally get your results. Study with strategy. Follow a clear, proven plan that's designed specifically for the IELTS test because that's what makes the real difference. And that's what gets you and your certification fast. So now you already know the 3 mistakes you need to stop making right now if you want to finally make your dream of living abroad come true. Mistake number 1, not having your IELTS score and not even preparing for it, even though it's a basic requirement for anyone who wants access to real life-changing opportunities abroad. Mistake number 2, believing that the IELTS test is too hard and that's impossible to get the score you need, and especially on your first try. And mistake number 3, thinking you need to study for hours and consume tons of materials to get the score, when in fact, it's not about how much you study, but how you study. Now that you know the mistakes that might be holding you back from living your dream abroad, in the next class, I'm going to give you the exact step-by-step strategy to guarantee your IELTS success. It's the fastest and most efficient way possible. No wasted time, no trial and error, just a clear strategic approach that no one else is talking about. But that makes all the difference in your results. If you're serious about moving abroad, the next class is the most important for you because I'm going to show you something that no one has ever shown you before. And in class 3, to complete the journey, I'll give you a full map of the IELTS exam so you know exactly what to expect in each section. Don't miss it. We're doing a giveaway at the end of the workshop. To participate, you need to be inside the community and post a summary for each class in there. Yes, you need to post your summary for every class to qualify. Okay? Inside the community, you can also ask me questions and connect with other amazing people who are on the same journey as you. If you're not in the community yet, there's a button right here on this page. Click and join us now. See you in the next class.